I think the central theme of the ownership state is for the formation of what broadly I called civic companies that combine both, crucially, employee share ownership by the service deliverers and also citizen ownership by users or recipients of that service. And the reason I use the term civil companies is, for me, a number of different company structures can sit underneath them, and we don't want to, at this stage, sort of fixate on one particular company form. And indeed, it might be the case that, depending on the nature of the service that we turn over to employee owners, as it were, different company structures are more appropriate. I think we want maximum flexibility, maximum scalability, and maximum applicability. And not all of those will be the same thing. Crucial to that, though, is the idea that it's important so that these employee-owned companies don't become producer interest groups and just essentially manage that budget for their own self-interest, that user groups sit on the board of that company. And as I argued in the ownership state, ownership is a diverse good that can be realised differentially. By that, it might be the case that I, as an employee share owner, have an equity stake that delivers me both a wage and, in some sense, a bonus. But as a user, if I have a power of veto or a power to dissolve the company or a power to challenge budgetary decisions, that is also a form of ownership. And the vision I have is a type of differential mutuality between the two, where we have a board run by a combination of employee share owners and client and service recipients. That way, I think you get the best of both worlds. Now, obviously, there are issues around the nature of the users involved. It's obvious that this model works best, or will work initially best, where you have long-term user recipients who have a vested interest. So it might be asthma sufferers, leukemia sufferers, HIV sufferers, people who have long-term permanent conditions who are users of that service who can sit on the board. Similarly, we can say long-term users of social housing or of any such service. The role of the centre will change profoundly. In my view, it will become a partial commissioner, i.e. it will reissue the budget every 3 years or every 5 years. It will also be, as it were, a watch kind of person or of last resort, i.e. if the company is failing and if users are not forming or not providing properly, I think the centre should also have the power to sort of, as it were, dissolve the employee-owned company, precisely because it was failing to deliver to agreed standards. So my view of, as it were, the new local centre will be that which upholds universal standards that come from the national centre, the governmental centre, upholds those standards and takes a watching role. So it's facilitating and guardianship. And I think that's a role that can be performed by a very small group of people with modern technology, development of trust platforms, so they can sense when there is a problem, when users identify there's a problem. And I think that's another safeguard, along with the level of users, against some sort of inappropriate local variation where standards that need to be met aren't met, or where there's kind of a general falling off of performance. The role of the national centre is, I think, more interesting again and different again, and that is to set the maximal. I don't like the word minimal standards, but the maximal standards. What all of the disaggregated endeavours should aspire to reach or fulfil, and I think that's the proper role. And what it should be is quite a complex role, is to allow enough for local variation, so it's not just centralised targets repeated by localised centres again, that same old nightmare, but actually in some sense allow for local variation and allow also for a recognition by the centre when it was failing. But also the centre wants failure to happen, because failure is a sign of innovation, and innovation is what in the end truly delivers success. There are no doubt there are significant barriers to the scaling up of this and to its mass popularisation within the public sector. What I would like to see is that unions, in some sense, recognise that it's in the interests of their members, and it is. It would, I think, reverse the de-skilling, particularly of women, at the front line, because smaller companies that retain some element that they save and redistribute as profit will require you not to abandon people to their fate. They will have to be reskilled, retrained, become flexible, and so in a genuine sense, I hope people's jobs get better, because there'll be more variety, more need, and more responsibility. As such, I think people's vocations will improve. They will actually have the wherewithal to deliver on the very reason why they went into the public sector in the first place. I think also that unless we give real return, unless people really can, in a non-pejorative way, profit from the experience, then it won't work. So I am in favour of rewarding innovation by giving an increased wage level through increased savings to those who take this on. I think we'd also have to secure pensions. We'd have to secure the assets during the transition, but I don't think that's a problem. And nobody who's written about this so far thinks it is either. Yes, workers would lose permanent jobs, but in the sense of how they viewed them, but those jobs weren't permanent anyway. They were always under threat. Because in the end, inefficiency always vanishes. So this is a chance for genuine ownership. And I think that needs to be propagated and popularised. And I think it needs to be shown to have massive educational, asset and income advantages. And that's why I think that the civil company structure has to be plural. We have to see what works. We have to see what shape and of share ownership we need to create in order to really incentivise people. Maybe it wouldn't be the John Lewis model where you get a bonus by virtue of your position, but on leaving you lose that bonus. Maybe it might be a tradable asset. We just have to keep a completely open mind as to the sort of companies that can deliver and will incentivise people enough to do it. But I think the most important incentivisation is the chance to demanagerialise and reprofessionalise. And it's reprofessionalisation that really matters, and that's what I hope this offers. And to my mind, at least, this should be welcomed by left and right, because it delivers what both have always purported to promise: reward, excellence, ownership, and empowerment.